Kooky. Like, oh my God, what's going on, mate?
What's going on? Well, since we last met, we've had the RBA decision.
Yeah.
They hiked. We had a budget. I'm sure we'll dig into that in some detail. And we've got the ongoing global issues of some resolution, non-resolution. I don't even know what hour or what day we look at it.
Definitely uncertain.
The problem concerning the Middle East. And so when you look at the tax changes that are in the budget, the business sector, the consumer sector are just sitting there thinking, what's going on?
And a few other countries starting to talk about tightening interest rates, which we never had before. They were all looking at easing.
They were up until literally a couple of months ago, including our friends in the US. And even though there's a new Fed chairperson there, it's going to be very hard for them to hold rates steady.
Is there inflation?
Inflation rates are picking up.
In Canada?
New Zealand are talking about it. They actually had a 5-4 vote against hiking. So next month they'll presumably hike. Canada, the UK, Eurozone's meeting in the next couple of days, literally, as this is being recorded. And it's a 50-50 bet whether they're going to start the hiking cycle. So in a funny way, Australia got ahead of the curve. We've had our 3 rate hikes and our cash rate is well above most of those countries. Yep. Most of them, I think. I'll have to double check. But, so we're ahead of the curve in a sense. But if the rest of the world's hiking interest rates, what's it mean for economic growth next year?
Globally.
Weaker, globally.
And we will talk about economic growth as we start to look at your board and talk about economic growth. But what data have we had released and say since our last meeting? And what do we, and also maybe you could just highlight what data we expect to see before the next meeting. The next meeting is 16th of June.
It's a week today.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we looking at?
Well, I'd say there's been sort of 3 or 4 key bits of data since we last spoke. GDP growth, 0.3% quarter on quarter. Pretty weak. And even though the annual figure held up at 2.5%, that included a very big number a year ago.
Earlier. Yeah.
So the 0.3 is, I think, a fair reflection of how the economy is going.
Right now,
because that's March quarter, and we've got into the June quarter, so we've got bits and bobs on, housing, spending, and these sort of things, and that's looking pretty weak. So the GDP numbers, the rate of economic growth in the economy is subdued, and that's being generous. The other bit of news was the rise.
Good. Just before we move on, let's talk about per capita, because that conversation is starting to be more often had. I know the RBA is not. Nobody seems to be interested in the per capita growth.
You and I are.
We are. And every Australian should be.
They certainly should be. I remember writing about this 4 or 5 years ago, and without having a go at Ross Gittins, who I do respect for his comments and his views, I was starting to talk about a per capita recession. He said, "What's this rubbish about a per capita recession? It doesn't matter as long as the economy is growing." But I think the conventional wisdom has shifted now that per capita GDP, so per person, the output of the economy per person, the dollars and cents, if you like, is the best way of measuring economic success. Because if the only reason why you're recording economic growth is because you've got population increase, then sure, the size of the pie is increasing, but there's more people eating at the pie.
Yeah.
So you get a smaller part of it per person. And that's what happened in the March quarter. We had a little bit of respite last year when the economy did kick up a little bit. But if we go back, say, 3 odd years, per capita GDP has been on average flat to slightly down. 3 years, no improvement in
slightly
living standards.
Down being negative.
Negative.
So we've had
a deterioration in living standards.
So
correct.
That's a per capita recession.
It is indeed, yes. And it's a long one now, 3 years, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, normally recessions, we've lived through a few. I'm generalising here, a bit here, but they're usually quite sharp, relatively short-lived, and by short-lived I mean 6 to 12 months. And then central banks cut, and then they recover.
I went and looked that back. It was 18 months is the longest we've ever had.
It's a very long one. And this is sort of like, it hasn't been deep, but it's been sort of niggling for quarter after quarter after quarter. We get a little bit of optimistic news. Remember John Howard's comments in 96, I think it was, when he won that election. We've had 5 minutes of economic sunshine, and then the Reserve Bank hiked. This time around, we get a little bit of good news, like we did last year. The Reserve Bank's hiked again. So what was sort of semi-optimistic in the latter part of last year has now turned into, oh, God, we're not feeling great. The consumer sentiment numbers, the ones that came out earlier today, in fact, were shocking, unambiguously bad. No, there's no sugarcoating that number. And so we consumers, we're not dumb. We can feel our mortgage rates going up. We can feel the cost of living pressure. We can feel this uncertainty. We call it animal spirits, but the vibe that's going around on economic policy, on tax and capital gains and negative gearing, all these things which, unless you're a tax expert, to be honest, are very hard to digest. I look at these things.
They're complex.
They're very bloody complex, and that's annoying. And then you throw in, as I said, the overseas issues, and people sort of see, Trump and the Iraq wars and Ukraine and what's going on in China and Taiwan. And people sort of think, enough. I'm going to hunker down, going to keep my little family network okay. I'm going to cut spending. And, of course, that means weaker economic activity.
So we had GDP number come out last week. So what other stuff has come out?
The other stuff's come out. The unemployment rate, we've had it increase to 4.5%.
That's a big jump.
It is a big jump. Back in January, it was 4.1. So we're up almost 0.5% in a couple of months. And, in fact, that 4.5% is the highest since 2022.
Wow.
And in 23-24, that fiscal year, we had unemployment at 3.5%. So even though it's been a slow burn, we're up 1 percentage point in the unemployment rate.
25%.
Wages growth has been moderate. And in the month of April, we had employment down, jobs lost 19,000. Now, sometimes that happens because of the statistical volatility, but I think there's a bit more going on here because job vacancies are down, hiring intentions are down from the NAB survey. And if businesses are thinking, what am I going to be doing with my business? I'm going to hunker down. I'm not going to hire more people. And if you're in an industry that's getting hammered, hospitalities, for example, real estate sectors under pressure, certainly in Melbourne, but also increasingly Sydney, you might think, jobs are going to be hard to get.
Do you think that some of the job numbers could be affected or have come about as a result of some of the government infrastructure stuff coming off now? In other words, it's falling away.
Mark, you've nailed it. That's going to be the next comment. Because I think that's really important. In the last couple of years, without picking a date that the metro project in Sydney finished, admittedly that was 2 years ago, there's another big metro project in Victoria, in Melbourne, that finished. At the federal government level, and this explains why the labour market, I remember us having a conversation 12 months ago, why is the unemployment rate so low when the economy's not that strong? And our answer was, and it's obvious in the data now, we can see it, in government hiring of nurses and teachers and carers, and that's fine.
What they call the care economy.
The care economy, and that's fine, but it masked what was happening to the private sector side of the economy, which was pretty subdued. The other thing which makes me a little nervous about the unemployment rate going forward is that a lot of that public sector hiring has been done. They've hired nurses. They've hired teachers and educators in the school system. They've hired the carers that they needed to. And so that surge of a couple of 100,000 jobs in the public sector that occurred from 2023 to the end of last year are full. We don't need any more. And in fact, in the budget, one thing that was in the budget that hasn't got a lot of attention, they're trying to pare back the size of the public service. Not much, but it's certainly stabilising. If it comes off even a little bit, that source of job creation, government demand, ain't going to be there this year.
So the unemployment number, and you broke it down beautifully as to what it's looking like, and the lack of new jobs being offered. The unemployment number, we're starting to see a drop-off in the amount of money being, maybe not in Victoria so much. We'll talk about Victoria in a moment.
Yes.
But just generally, state by state and federally, a lot of the big budget expenditure items are starting to drop away.
Yes.
Like the big infrastructure things. Sure, Snowy 2.0, whatever it is, they're all still going to continue on, but they're a disaster. But but a lot of the stuff is starting to fall away.
Queensland's got the Olympics, so there's a bit of ramping up.
Correct.
Queensland might be the odd one out because they've got Olympic Games related rail and stadiums and that sort of stuff. Yeah,
but it might save us a little bit, but in terms of the job numbers, but still at 4.5%, I don't think the Olympics is going to change that number.
No.
It would seem to me, if anything, the unemployment number is more likely to go north than south.
Yeah.
And you might also comment on our long-range average for unemployment is always north of 4.5 anyway.
It is. So this is sort of like the chicken and egg of the economist, the two-handed economist. On the one hand, 4.5 is actually quite low. looking at where we've been in the last 50 years, we usually were optimistic about the unemployment rate if it fell to 5,
yeah, totally.
5.5. Oh, wow, that's good.
So the fact
that we got to 4.5 is good. However, and this is on the other hand, this is the however, given the structural changes in our economy, aging demographics is one thing. So people age 65 and over are staying in the workforce longer. Some because they have to, because they're hitting retirement age with a mortgage. So, hell, I've got to keep working until I pay this thing off. And others because we're living longer, which is a great thing, as you know. Yeah, we're living longer. I want to be busy. I can't just sit on my bum and watch TV all day. I want to keep working, and even if it's 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, rather than my full-time job.
Well, some of us have to.
And some of us have to too, because, yes, we've got to pay the bills.
Because I saw a report come out last week. I think NAB might have, I can't remember who sponsored it, but they said in order to live 10 years past retirement, the minimum amount of super you've got to have is 400 grand. That's 10 years. So that's 75. So
and hopefully we all live well beyond that.
So given that the average Australian male is 81.2 years and the female's 84 or 5, given that's the case, $400,000 is not enough.
And most people do not have that in their retirement
Correct. So
account.
Therefore, they keep working.
Yes.
Working.
So it's not just the mortgage. And that's the other thing. People are hitting 65 with a mortgage because 20 years ago they took out a 30-year mortgage to sort of reduce their monthly repayments as opposed to a 25. So they're hitting retirement age 65, and they still owe a couple of $100,000. So probably not a huge amount, but still, you know, even if your house is worth $1 million or 1.5 and you've still got a couple of $100,000 mortgage, you've still got to pay it off.
You've got to make payments.
You've got to make payments.
And live.
Yes, and pay all your other bills. So it's really interesting that is distorting how the labour market is functioning. And this is why, and we've discussed NAIRU, the accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. And there's a debate that goes on, and there's no answer to that question.
Well, it's a model anyway.
Back in the day, it was probably 6%, then it was 5%, and now we think it's about where we are now, about 4.5%. So that's the unemployment rate that the economy can tolerate without generating additional inflation. So we're sort of there already. So if the unemployment rate goes above that, it's too high, and we actually get downward pressure on wages. And interestingly, on the wages side, the other number that came out was the wage price index, which was now quite about a month ago, well contained, 3.3% wages growth, and that's sort of not up, not down. It's right in the groove.
That's the average national.
Yeah, the national wages is 3.3.
Yeah. So we've had the unemployment number that's come out 4.5, and whether or not 4.5 is the Goldilocks position or sweet spot, we will never know. What's Seek ads showing?
They're showing a decline in job ads, but the Seek wages pressures are basically flat. They're volatile, depending whether it's a lot of mining people who get high wages there versus a lot of people in the care industry who tend to get low wages. So that Seek number, who do a fantastic job of measuring things, so it's the advertised wage for the jobs on their website, it's bouncing around this 3.5%. So there's nothing there to make anybody scared one way, up or down. It's sort of like, you know, sometimes in economics you get a number, you think, yep, we'll take that one, we'll put that one in the locked box of okay numbers not to worry about, and we'll worry about the things that are either falling or going up and how we manage those.
Because we've got this unusual situation about we got the monthly inflation numbers for April.
Yes.
And they came in, I can't remember.
4.2 for the annual figure.
Generally speaking, not that reliable, but it doesn't matter.
But no, not reliable at all. And the reason why they fell was that we had the 26-cent cut in petrol excise.
Okay.
So there's always excuses.
And how much would that add to it?
Did I say about half a percentage point?
Yeah.
So almost all of the drop in the annual rate from 4.6 there's rounding things, and the price of potatoes changes too, so there's all these things moving at the same time, but basically petrol's the big one. And of course, so the May numbers which come out in the not too distant future will show another fall, because the May petrol price was relatively low. Just drive past your servo and you can see $1.70 or thereabouts. But at the end of June, 30 June, 1 July, this excise cut ends, and I'm pretty sure the government's not going to extend it.
Well, they didn't announce it.
All of a sudden, the price is going to go back up to $2 something for your regular unleaded, probably close to $3 for your diesel. So people will then think, oh, gee, that was a bit of a respite for only a couple of months. But again, feeds into inflation.
what's interesting about that, Stephen, was when the fuel excise tax gets reimposed on the cost of our petrol at the pump. That number won't feed into the ABS numbers until the end of October.
Correct, end of October, correct. And here we are in June, and the RBA's got 4 meetings between now and then.
Yeah, totally.
And so they're going to be sort of thinking, well, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? Now, look, they've got a pretty good handle on petrol prices. That's one thing that we do know. But they don't know the pass-through.
They don't know the knock-on effect.
Yes.
Like delivery costs, blah, blah, all that other
logistics and transport.
Yeah, because like it could go up again.
Indeed.
I know people are paying $25 delivery fee, or I think they're calling it delivery tariff, for running restaurants for every time they get something delivered, on top of the cost of the goods.
My local cafe, which I like to go to early in the morning for a coffee, he's a true fellow, so he's probably going to be listening to this podcast. He listens in every month, Mark, so he's one of our loyal followers. But he's sort of saying that he's just got a fabulous little cafe, and he says that there's a petrol surcharge.
Yeah.
And so for his, 20 litres of milk, his cartons of bread, the eggs that come in, the small goods.
They all charge.
They're all charging. So it's about $8 here, $9 here, $12 here, $6 here. He said at the end of each month, I'm forking out an extra $500. And this is just a little coffee shop, fabulous coffee shop. But his margins are so tight, and his ability to put up his prices are so limited because it's so bloody competitive, the coffie shop. You put your prices up, I'll go to the one around the corner. And
they do that.
And they do that. So his pressure, so he's sort of sitting there thinking, God, even though he doesn't use petrol as such in his business, it's the delivery of his bacon and eggs and bread and coffee and milk and all that sort of stuff that he needs to run his business.
Well, what's interesting about that, Cookie, is that when we look at the unemployment or the propensity to employ people from here on end, given that scenario, given that he can't put his prices up but his margins are being compressed, and if he's thinking to himself, at some stage I'd like to put on one other person, a server.
Yep.
As his margin compresses, he's going to say, well, it's not going to be now. He won't put someone on. So his propensity to employ, in other words, the propensity to keep, therefore, the unemployment number where it is, as the population grows, because it's going to keep growing.
Yep.
And they've all got to get jobs, or they need a job.
They need a job. And this is the critical thing, is margin compression. If put it this way, if the economy's strong, most businesses are making money. Yeah, we're doing well. We're selling lots of stuff. We've got a decent margin. We want to expand. We're using new technology to do things and, all this sort of stuff. I'm going to hire more people. That's when you get this lovely cycle of strong economic growth. The opposite, which I think we're in the early stages of negotiating. Yeah, I can see now, think, things aren't horrible, but gee, my margins are being squeezed. Oh, my costs are going up. Yeah, customers are still coming in.
My margins are being squeezed in my business.
Yeah.
In the Yellow Brick Road, we're getting squeezed.
Yes. And so you've got this sort of issue that you think, well, can I put up my prices? Probably not, because I'm going to lose customers. So you then say, well, I'm not going to hire anyone else. I'm going to work as a small business person. Mm-hmm. I'm going to work my tail off, to keep this business going. And hopefully we get better times 3, 6, 12 months down the track, whenever that happens to be. But in the meantime, your hiring intentions take a dive. Overtime hours get cut because, even with your existing staff, don't come in Saturday morning because I've got to pay you penalty rates. So, I'll just...
Well, we're just talking just outside here.
So you avoid penalty rates and things like that happen, particularly with a coffee shop and things that are open on weekends.
That happened just outside here. I have never seen that coffee shop outside here. There've been a tenant of mine, and then prior to that, they were a tenant just up the road for 25 years. I've never seen them close on a public holiday, and they closed on our last Queen's birthday, or the King's birthday public holiday on this Monday. And I asked him why, and he said, I have to pay double time and a half. Yeah. It's $80 an hour. He said, all 5, 6 staff. He said, I run the risk of people not coming in, I should say, like in terms of customers, because it's a nice sunny day. He said, I'll lose money. He said, so I'm not going to open.
It's a little bit like, the public holiday surcharge that you often see if you go to a pub or a cafe, or a restaurant, extra 15%. In a way, as a customer of those, like, oh, bugger, it's an expensive meal to begin with, I'm paying more. But you can understand completely and utterly why it happens, because the small business owner, the cafe, the restaurant, the bar, whatever it happens to be, have to pay wages, again, the cost of doing business is, so we focus on the consumer price index, by definition, consumer price index, that's you and me. But we should have a business price index, and we sort of have a producer price index, which the ABS produce as well, which looks at the cost of running a business. Now, all businesses are different. Some use lots of machines, mining. Some use lots of people, cafes. So it's a bit of a different thing, but we can work out at a sort of like a macro level, at an aggregate level, that if business costs are going up because of your fuel costs, your wage costs, your rent, your overdraft because of higher interest rates, and your electricity prices have gone up in the last couple of years by a big amount, and you've got fridges and all this other stuff, it's really expensive. And so unless you put up your prices, you're going to be buried.
So we've got a meeting on the 16th, okay? So we've just got, so the data coming out is unemployment is rising, it seems, maybe got some way to go. Inflation is also rising and maybe got somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Some way to go in terms of north. We've got GDP falling. It looks quite unhealthy.
It's very unhealthy.
And I'll be honest with you, Steve. I don't like looking backwards on GDP and adding that into the annual GDP number, because what happened in June quarter last year has got no relevance to me whatsoever. I'm only interested in what's happening now.
This quarter.
I'd rather take this quarter and extrapolate 3 months.
Multiply by 4.
Three quarters.
To get an annual figure. So 1.2%.
Yeah.
That's crappy. That's really crappy graph.
And I'd rather do that. I just don't understand this backward-looking thing. I mean, I know, but anyway, I sort of know the reason I do it, but I don't like it. Or take 2 months and 2 months, 2 quarters back and 2 quarters forward, at least. Do something.
Some sort of moving average to pick up that recent trend.
Yeah, correct.
Which is happening.
Because there should be moving average.
It's the March quarter. Mate, we're in the middle of June, so the March quarter was weak. So January, February, March, the March quarter, that was when we had this pretty significant slowing in economic growth.
Yeah, and there's no reason.
And here we are in April, May and June, and consumer sentiment's been shocking. And
cost of living has just gone out of control, and cost of running a business
house prices are starting to weaken too, which is impacting sentiment. Look, they're not crashing, I don't think, but people still say, house prices are going down. Again, complicated by negative gearing, tax changes and capital.
Well, let's talk about that stuff.
So all this sort of stuff is filtering into people's psychology.
Yeah.
And as we were saying before, just a short minute ago, when people are feeling uncertain, they tend to say, look, we'll just take a time out economically. Look, I've got my job, I'm working hard, I'm paying my bills, but we're not going to spend a cent extra than is essential.
And that discretionary spending piece, as opposed to the non-discretionary spending where things I have to spend my money on, the discretionary stuff will start to change. And the June meeting, money markets are saying there won't be a rate increase. There'll be no change.
Correct.
And everybody's getting excited about that. And I think the reason for that is only because the money market believes there won't be enough data around. Because, we know that this Reserve Bank is interested in data only. They don't care about anything else. They're not looking forward. They're not looking backwards. They want the data, what it is today. And the next lot of data comes out at the end of July for the June quarter and the year to June.
Yeah.
And that'll be the big number, the inflation number, the most important number. Do we get another unemployment number?
We do. We get another one.
We're beginning of August, isn't it?
Yeah, the second week of August, I think it is. So
and
just before that.
Before they meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll have that. They'll have another for the next meeting. It's 2 meetings time that we don't get until we get the quarterly. No, it's 3 meetings time until we get the quarterly inflation number. So we've got the one next week.
Yeah.
We've got the next one and then the next one. So they've got the quarterly number. So this is when they space them out 7 weeks. Remember we used to have RBA meeting on the first Tuesday of every month, except January. Now they've got this different calendar that coincides with quarterly inflation, quarterly GDP, like 10 days after those numbers come out.
Yeah, which sort of makes sense because
it does make sense.
She's only interested in the data.
Correct.
Although the meeting on the 16th of June, there's not much more data around.
From here on, there's not much. There's a few little bits and pieces, but nothing that's going to be not inflation, not jobs. There's just there's nothing to really go on. So I dare say a week out from that board meeting of the Monetary Policy Board, they've probably written the papers, what we're going to talk about at this discussion. And we do know, and the RBA have disclosed this, they do have with their board special items to discuss. So a year or two ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, it was the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Then it was obviously the oil shock. Sometimes it's the Nehru is discussed. Sometimes it's the impact on house prices on spending and the economy. They have a little different special theme to talk about. This one, I think they're going to be looking at a whole range of scenarios.
All capital gains tax, everything.
They have to look at that because that's an important
fiscal
economic
policy
issue that they're going to have to deal with. And dare I say it, and I don't like to use the word stagflation, but what you just described a couple of minutes ago, Mark, I don't want to preempt what you're going to say.
I was leading you there.
I think you're but high and persistent inflation, rising unemployment, weakening GDP is the very definition of stagflation. Stagflation is stagnation of economic growth, stagnant economic growth. The flation part is inflation. And so we've got weaker growth, higher inflation, rising unemployment. What do you do? It's do you keep hammering rate hikes to get inflation down? But you'll see unemployment could hit 5 point something, no doubt. Or do you say, well, hang on, let's try to preserve a few jobs, but then inflation stays at 4% for even longer, and so you muck up your inflation target. And
what do they do in the late 70s? Because I remember we had a recession in 82.
We certainly did.
We had stagflation in the late 70s and the mid 70s too.
Yes, and they were all related. Just by the way, which is similar to what we've got now,
off the back of oil prices. In fact, the late 70s was a war with Iran. It was an Iran war.
Yeah, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah,
as they say. What they did initially was think, okay, this is what they call an exogenous shock. Rate hikes won't change the price of oil in the Middle East.
Yep.
And that's true. However, it does impact your economy. So there was this they waited a couple of years until inflation was double digits, unemployment was nearly double digits. My God, imagine that. How bad was the economy then? And then they decided, again with in the US, the Fed chairperson was Paul Volcker. You might remember Volcker.
I do remember.
And he came out and said, fight inflation first. We've just got to suck it back, take our rotten medicine. We have got to get that inflation rate down. So he hiked and hiked and hiked.
And the recession. And
it was recession.
Yep.
And a shocker, double-digit unemployment.
A bad recession. And
there's no recession's good, but this was absolutely.
Do you know what? You just sort of scraped over a bit of PTSD for me. But I remember back in 1980.
Yep.
I was involved. My business partner and I at the time had brand new apartments for sale in South Bondi, looking north on the beach.
Wow. Yep.
And we couldn't sell one apartment for $240,000. Not one. We couldn't sell one. Because we just finished at that point and the recession hit, and people didn't buy anything. We couldn't sell anything.
The banks would lend them the money because 10% unemployment.
Yeah.
So you and I might say, gee, that's a bargain. Hang on, I just lost my job.
Yeah.
Dear bank, can I borrow $240,000?
Unemployment went up. Yep. And people's jobs were subdued, and people actually was doing what you said. They were nervous, so investors didn't want to buy either. Yep. When the recession was over, 2 years later, we bailed out of the whole business, and somebody else bought the whole lot, and then they were selling it for $800,000. But it did bounce back heavily. But we're talking about prime real estate on Bondi Beach, facing north, brand new. We could not sell one, not one. So, and that was off the back of stagflation and off the back of them trying to, like you just said, like Volcker's theory.
Fight inflation first.
Control inflation, because inflation is the bogeyman. Yep. Control inflation and everything will be okay. Well, this is what happened in 90. Keating said, this is the recession we had to have.
There's an element of truth in that.
No, because that's what I want to say. Yeah. For me, I don't think this government or our RBA wouldn't say that, but this government won't say it either because it's not going to be, wouldn't be a popular thing to say. But my gut feeling is, Jim's a big advocate of Paul Keating, and Paul Keating's still active. My gut feeling is Keating has probably said to him, you know what? I'm going to tell you now, the only way you're going to solve this bogeyman, inflation, is through the interest rate cycle.
Of
pain.
Genuine economic pain.
We need a recession.
Well, we need. Well,
I hate saying that.
No, Mark. No, it's a really, really interesting point. It's a bit like saying, "Do you want to have open heart surgery?" Well, no. Actually, if you need it to save your life, well, yes, of course, I've got to have it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have it for fun.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not saying King said it to be a bad person, really.
No, because
he believed it.
He believed it, and funnily enough, that was the time when it happened that snapped the inflation stick. Because until then, we had inflation at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more percent, and only after that recession we had to have the inflation get to 2 to 3%,
and stayed there
for 25 years or whatever it is. So we need slower growth. Okay, let's start from first principles. And the RBA and even the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, says this: we need the economy to be growing less rapidly to get demand down, to get inflation down.
Do you think it's a nice way of saying we need to have a recession? Is it a way of him saying, look, this is a recession we need to have?
Look, I think in his heart of hearts he doesn't want one.
No, but nobody wants a recession.
No.
But we do need a recession in order to control...
to get inflation down.
We must control inflation.
If we had a recession, and we might be in this June quarter, might be a minus. I'm not sure yet, but it's getting mighty close. And September quarter is probably going to be just as bad. So by the time we're in December this year, so barely 6 months' time, we could be talking we're in a recession.
Yeah.
That would definitely get the inflation rate down. It's sort of one of these things. What will to get inflation from 4.2 whatever to 2.5 in a reasonable time in the next 12 to 18 months? You can't engineer it in 6 months. No, it doesn't work that way. But what will we need to get that inflation rate from 4.5 to 2.5? Let's use round numbers. It is an extended period of weak growth or negative growth, recession. And that's something that no one's willing to tolerate, I don't think, because in a sense it's the medicine that's too distasteful. Well, they might think it.
Well, it's worse.
They can't say it publicly.
Well, stagflation is worse.
Worse, because that's right, because you get persistent high inflation and high unemployment, and people can't do anything.
Yeah.
So again, maybe in history, and even back in the day, Paul Volcker and then Keating and I think even Bernie Fraser, who was RBA governor at the time, when interest rates were 17+%, was saying that we had to do it. We had to keep hiking rates until inflation came down.
And we should remember they will do it too.
Oh, the Michelle Bullock and Andrew Houser appears to be very much an inflation hawk. By that I mean he is one of these people who says, well, obviously he has an eye on economic growth and the unemployment rate, but the best way to achieve full employment is to have inflation down.
Yeah.
And of course, their view of an economic cycle is probably 5 years. Most people's is 5 months. Where am I in 5? Oh, damn it, I'm under a lot of pressure now. The RBA can sort of manage a business cycle. They don't mind if it's 1 year where inflation's a bit above, or pre-pandemic. We had inflation below 2% for a couple of years. RBA didn't panic, In hindsight, maybe they should have, but whatever. But the bottom line, and I think with what we've seen in the last 12 months, 6 months in particular, I think that we do need to get that inflation rate down sooner rather than later, and by a bigger amount than's currently put into those forecasts. Those forecasts that the RBA put out last time.
So if you were on the RBA and you know what you know now, based on, let's assume you're at the June meeting, given this conversation and given history, would you say, if you're on the board, you know what, I think we should actually have a rate hike on June the 16th?
My
early and fast
view would be no, but I would say, Michelle Bullock, Governor, when you give your press conference, scare the daylights out of the population.
The jawbone.
Yeah. And if our next meeting in late July, that those inflation numbers that we get, if they are showing inflation has not come down, and if the unemployment rate, well, whatever that does, don't
worry about it. No, we shouldn't worry.
We've got a hike. So send the signal.
Would you do 50?
We didn't. Well, if that inflation rate stays high,
because it is extraordinarily high, it's very high.
When you think back to the last time we had stagflation, and we're not going to have 17% interest rates, so there's no point even theorising about that. But they were the days that before we had official interest rate announcements. They used to just sort of creep up interest rates during the day on money markets, and so it was a bit hard to tell exactly what was going on.
A different structure.
But it was often a very different structure because, what's that, 45 years?
Yeah.
How many years ago that is? 35 years ago. Interest rates would go up by 5 percentage points in a year. Like, so if you think about it, it's like 50, 50, 50, 50, 10 times in a year. That's sort of effectively what they did now. They didn't announce it like that, but you noticed it. I noticed it. I had my first mortgage back then.
Well, borrowings are much slower though too.
Correct. What do? You say no, but you start talking harder than they already are. Now, they've always been very hawkish. If you listen to what the governor said, and again, Andrew Houser, I don't mean to come back to him, but he sort of seems to be the messenger man, if you like. He's the one who does these fireside chats. So when he does his next one, listen to it, because he'll give away all the clues that they're thinking about, like the sort of semi-unexpected rate hike back in March, the one that was sort of like 60-40. He gave a talk, I think, to Michelle Grattan in the Canberra Press Gallery, a podcast, and he was saying, yeah, we're going to hike, paraphrasing. Oh, yeah, maybe. And then lo and behold, they did. So he's the messenger. So watch what he says, and he's one of those people that I get the impression is very much a fight inflation and fix unemployment later.
Because we did run the experiment last year where let's not fight inflation aggressively and let's see if we can keep unemployment low, which they sort of did in June, July maybe.
They got a 2.7 inflation rate, which is sort of near 2.5, and the trajectory was like that.
And
so
unemployment was 4.2.
Yes, and so they did a little jig, and I'm not being. Oh, I thought they could have cut more. It had that trend continue, but lo and behold, it went back up to 3 point something
very quickly,
and then we had the oil shock just thrown on top of that in March. So
it went back very quickly, like October, November. Well, I'd like to, before we do the board, we're going to do the board in a moment. Do you think, just to end this conversation off outside of just where they're going to put rates up in the June meeting, do you think in your heart of hearts, and it's not something you want, but do you think that there's every chance that this year that we could see a recession? Negative growth?
I think that there's a bet on even bet. And by recession, it doesn't necessarily mean 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. I just want to be cautious about that, because if you had a minus 0.5, plus 0.2, and then a minus 0.5 in the next 3 quarters, you don't have 2 consecutive, but you've had minus 0.8 in 3 quarters. So it's a combination of having, let's call it annualized economic growth at 0 or negative, and the unemployment rate at 5 point something. I think there's a better than even chance we'll see that.
I'm in total agreement with you, and I think
come December, the numbers that we'll be talking about, you and me in December, whatever that date is, we'll probably have GDP at 0 and unemployment at 5, and be saying, I don't know what inflation will do then. It's still probably going to be 3.5. It might have come down a little bit, but that's the outlook. The economy is just not got any traction in the areas that drive growth.
And I don't see what's going to do it either. So let's just quickly talk about the capital gains tax. So
yes.
I mean, the capital gains tax doesn't really affect the economy as such. But what it does do is it creates a certain level of uncertainty and therefore dampers activity. And that's what I'm worried about most. It's very confusing to start with.
Yes. You've got to dig into the details. Like most tax changes have a degree of complexity to them. Yeah. And that's why I think the mantra from economists is make the tax system simple and understandable. So I know how much tax I've got to pay, you know how much, and whether you like it or not, that's what I pay. When you've got different uplift factors for inflation adjusted, and then depending on your marginal tax rate, I can understand
Get evaluation.
But it's difficult. And I think back to the bloody mining tax debate 10 years ago, which Ken Henry, in all his super intelligence, created this super profits tax on mining that only he and some professor of economics could understand, because and I think we should tax mining super profits, not regular profits, but when they start making a truckload because iron ore is $150 a tonne, fine, collect a bit more revenue. So the simplification is one aspect of the tax rules that this has ignored. Now, if you sit down and work it out, you can work it out. Of course you can. But for most people who, whether they're PAYG taxpayers or small business owners or whatever the case may be, are just a little confused about what it means. And even the negative gearing changes that, okay, you can't buy an established dwelling, you can buy a new dwelling, but your losses aren't instantly deductible. They're cumulative. So if you buy a brand new dwelling and you negative gear it, which you can do under the new rules, and just say you collect $40,000 in rent, but you pay $50,000 in interest, $10,000 loss. You don't claim that off this year's tax.
You accumulate it.
You accumulate it. So
for the
in
day
5 years' time,
when you start getting more rent.
Yeah. So when you start when that pattern changes, you finally
it's a carry forward loss,
which is fine in a way, but sometimes you need the tax relief now. So there's an element of,
but like you said, it's too confusing. It's too complicated.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Our tax system's already complicated because they keep patching things all the time.
And then you throw in superannuation issues on tax, and you're at this age and that old, and it's like,
you get brain damage.
And I'm in that age cohort now. I think I speak to my accountant and ask her, what the hell should I do? She says, I'll leave it with me. And my tax is so basic. I just collect a bit of money and I pay myself a wage, and that's about it. It's not, I don't have any complexity in there. However, and I look at this shit all the time, and I think, well, what do I do? Do I owe money or not?
Yeah.
And I should know. I owe money, fine. And I'm happy to pay my tax.
And therefore, if I owe money or if I don't owe money, that'll make a difference in the decision I might make in terms of investing.
Correct.
So therefore, it dampens activity.
Taking a step back on why they did it. So, Mark, you might sort of say, well, why the hell did they do this?
Well, I don't understand.
If people are sort of like being noisy against it, and they are, that's fine. We've got democracy. That's good. And it gets back to this inflation thing in a funny way. They wanted to tighten the budget. So NDIS...
You mean spending, budget spending.
And collect more tax.
Yeah.
They wanted to cut spending and increase taxes.
So reduce the deficit.
So reduce the deficit, get us back towards balance. They did a little bit. So they cut the NDIS, which was a big decision.
Cut the growth on the NDIS.
Yes, they cut the growth and took it out of the forward estimates. The other spending cuts were not very big. They were a couple of billion here and then. A couple of billion, I don't mean to be flippant, but we've got a $3 trillion economy this year. So $1 billion is not much. They thought they had to do something on tax and to make it fair and to improve affordability. So in a way, this is, and look, and I'm a lefty, as you know, I'm a Chardonnay socialist or whatever. They wanted to do the right thing, the hand on their heart too, to make affordability better for young people. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So there's this debate about, we're going to build more social housing or less social housing, all this other stuff. But they thought that what they were doing on the negative gearing and the capital gains tax was collecting more revenue from people who had capital gains. And we know from the tax office data that it tends, not exclusively, but it tends to be people on higher incomes that get capital gains tax. If you're just a wage and salary earner in the care economy on $70,000 a year, you probably don't have much capital gains tax. If any, you probably don't. So they thought that being a way of equalising and also to take some pressure out of the economy. Now, us economists would have said, cut harder and help the RBA even more than you're doing. So, we didn't discuss this a minute ago on our RBA discussion, but, you could have the government cut spending by $20 billion across all segments. It might be health, it might be education, it might be defence, it might be whatever, road funding, who knows, or hike taxes. We've in fact got a tax cut coming on the 1st of July. A little one. The was it $7 a week or something they announced last week, whatever. So that's actually putting money into the economy. And so while they have to do that politically, again, me being an anti-inflation economist, I'd say, well, don't put a brass razor into the economy. Take every dollar out that you can to get that inflation rate down. And, we've had this sort of conversation before when things aren't means tested, like the electricity subsidy and these things. I get that. And I get this $250. I don't. My kids need it, but I don't. My kids have sort of got their mortgage. They're doing the right thing. They say, Dad, every time there's a rate hike, or the price of this has gone up.
You're to blame.
Well, someone's to blame. But so, it's one of these ones where means testing is actually a good thing, I reckon. And
I agree.
So to help the poor the poorer folk and the ones under the most amount of stress, give them $500. But give me nothing. Give me nothing.
I agree,
please,
but that's happened with the electricity rebate. By the way, with the 5% government guarantee, that's not means tested either.
No, anybody can get it.
Anyone can get it. It used to be means tested, but it's not means tested now.
So there's a whole lot of things, and not means testing. It makes it simple too. So that's one advantage. Just goes to everybody. You don't have to.
But still.
The end point of all this, Mark, is that we've got this. We've had the budget a month ago, roughly. We've got an RBA decision next week. The policy settings are complex, which is not a good thing.
Confusing.
They'll get them through the Parliament, I'm sure.
Of course they will.
They will. They've already got them through the House.
They would have already known.
And they're going to lean on the Greens and a couple of other people in the Senate.
They'll do a deal.
Yep, they'll do a deal, which is fine. That's how politics works. How politics works. Love it or hate it, it's how it works.
Yep.
And so within a month or two, it'll be through. And then all this noise will start to fade away, and we'll start focusing on, petrol's gone back up again. House prices are down, or what's happening in the global economy. And the government's hoping that, by the end of this year or certainly next year, that inflation rate has come down. Partly, hopefully, the end of the resolution of the Middle East war, and petrol's about $60 a barrel.
And interest rates have done this job.
And interest rates have done the thing, unexpectedly. We say, that's an unexpected, you and I have been around long enough to see unexpected numbers. Wouldn't it be lovely if that September quarter and even the December quarter numbers, which don't come out till January next year, were 0.4s in the trimmed rate? Yeah, it could happen. I'm not saying, certainly not what I'm forecasting, but you can sort of see that if the unemployment goes up and the economy goes down, that your inflation rate will come down. It's just a matter of whether we get 0.8, 0.9 quarterly inflation rates or 0.5 or 0.4. We want 0.5s.
Well, I tell you what I'm worried about. It's all right for you and I to sit here and say all these things, but in this process, there's going to be a couple of million people are going to do it really tough, including your kids and my kids.
Yeah.
We're going to do it really tough. We're okay. Your kids will be okay. My kids will be okay because their parents look after them. But there'll be kids out there who don't have parents to look after them and have taken.
The bank of mum and dad doesn't exist for them.
So they're going to do it tough, and they're going to get a lot of trauma and stress and drama. But that's probably okay. Everyone's got to deal with that. I dealt with it when I was younger too, I guess. That's one. There will be people for sure who are going to lose their job, mate. And I'm one of those kids whose dad lost his job every bloody recession because my dad worked in a factory. Yeah. And I know what that's like, what that does to a family. Yeah. It sort of it forms certain types of characteristics in a family. It certainly did in my case. There's going to be people going to lose their job. Yeah. There's going to be people are going to be stress off their head on their mortgage. There's going to be uncertainty that's floating around, so investors will stop investing. Whilst this all needs to be done, this is the recession we probably have to have. I don't like the fact, as a working class kid, I don't like to have the fact that we're going to have to. Somebody's going to experience it. It won't be you, and it won't be me. It won't be Paul Keating. It won't be Paul Keating. It won't be Jim Chalmers, and it won't be the Prime Minister. You and I will just go and look into these things and talk about numbers and stuff like that, mate. And, it's easy for us to talk about it, but there's going to be some poor bastards, mate. This is just going to cop it in the neck. And
I just want to say that on that point, that, here we are 5 minutes ago saying the unemployment rate's gone from 3.5 to 4.5% in the last 2 years, roughly.
Yep.
That is 100,000 people.
Yep, exactly.
Who had a job.
Or we're working 5 days a week, now doing 1 day work.
Correct. And so 100,000 people, that's the MCG for the freeze day yesterday.
Yeah.
88,000, whatever. Think of everyone who's losing their job around the country. So,
and it'll be Christmas time too, by the way, this is going to happen.
Correct. And that's the income that you use to pay your rent, to pay your mortgage, and to pay your food on the table and things, all for the sake of managing the economy. It's a funny part of what I try to digest.
It's a weird fiction in our world.
We say 4.5% unemployment really quickly, but hang on, that's a lot of poor people. A lot of people, even high flyers, lose their job.
Yeah, totally.
And just by the way, this is probably for next time, artificial intelligence taking jobs.
Yeah.
So even outside RBA interest rates and tax policy, we spoke of that today. But there's these other sort of undercurrents in the economy, artificial intelligence. Banks and a lot of these legal firms and accounting firms are getting artificial intelligence to check tax documents and to read.
Write them.
Sorry, to write them and write draft contracts. And sure, you have a human just go over it in the end. But basically, what used to take, I don't know, 2 people a month to write is taking this machine an hour to write and one person to spend one day overlooking it. And here's our contract, here's your legal documents, here's your tax information. We don't need you young lawyers anymore. We don't need you accountants anymore. We don't need the bankers.
Anyone in admin either.
And admin, yes.
And so advertising as well. They get...
Oh, mate, it's a...
And AI is designed to do that. So artificial intelligence is actually designed to make everything much more efficient and let's call it productive, but which means less wages, much more productive. So one way of measuring productivity is how many labour hours have I got to spend to produce this glass? Yeah. Well, if AI says I don't have to anymore, I only have to do 2 minutes using AI to produce this glass instead of having 2 people for 2 days. That's what AI is designed to do. That's the whole objective of it.
And it's a good thing, but it has big implications as it's being implemented.
Yeah, and we're going to see. I'm going to guarantee that in the next 2 years, as AI advances at a pace that I've never seen anything advance in my life, and sophistication as well, that we will see a permanently larger unemployment number in this country.
And there'll be a dilemma about how to fix it. That'll be the new problem. I agree with you.
It's going to have a 5 in front of it.
It'll be the new problem. Like inflation's been the problem, even coming out of the pandemic and now, whatever. That might persist. I don't know. But we haven't had a genuine unemployment problem. Yes, we always want unemployment to be low. Of course we do. But we've not had one where we've had 6 or 7% unemployment for 15, 20 years, for a long, long time.
Yeah. We haven't had this since the 90s.
Even longer,
it's 35 years.
And so, but what do you do when there's no jobs? If the economy's growing, but I don't need, as a employer, if I can get a machine or artificial intelligence to do this job
for cheap,
I'll do it. And
of course you will.
Like the car industry, the cars only have one person in a control booth or a couple of people in the control booth with all these robots sort of putting on the wheels and the windscreens and the steering wheels. And the other beauty about that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So these production lines, if you like, go back to Henry Ford. There were men screwing on the hubcaps and doing all this other stuff. Now you just need a couple of people doing this, and out the end pops all these cars, robots, 24/7.
And robots,
and no wonder cars are relatively cheap.
And robots are artificial intelligence.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are. There's different artificial intelligence. It's not just reading a document, but there's machines that produce stuff that actually are part of the production process. So the dilemma is going to be for the Reserve. It's unreal.
The dilemma is going to be for the Reserve Bank in those days when that happens. Yeah. Is will it not be fit for purpose? Because the Reserve Bank's current job is full employment.
Yeah,
that's one of its mandates these days.
It is.
So it's going to be interesting as to how it uses interest rates to ensure full employment, because it can't. Because the reason I'm not employing people, if I'm one of those people who are using artificial intelligence to run my business, is not because interest rates are too high. It's because it's more efficient. No, it's got nothing to do with interest rates.
Nothing.
On the Reserve Bank's current logic, if it is about interest rates, we'll have 0% interest rate.
0 or 10, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it makes no difference.
It makes no difference to me because I'm not going to hire these machines and these data centers to manage the data flow that I need to do my task, be it constructing or thinking or whatever. The interest rates are almost irrelevant to me.
So it's going to be interesting to watch that space.
Oh, hell's bells, yeah.
So let's have a look at your space.
Let's have a look at the checklist. Let's have a look at the checklist. Okay, we're looking on now. This is going to be implications for interest rates only.
Yep.
GDP, as we discussed, is about neutral. So you don't discount the strong numbers last year completely, but you don't embrace them completely. So point 3, we're erring to the easing side, and maybe when we get the next one, we'll move to easing. Inflation, rate hikes, unambiguously, Easy peasy, that's the one. Labour market, I'm still putting in neutral, even though we talked about some of the downside risks to job creation, upside risks to unemployment. 4.5%, as we discussed, is still pretty low.
Yeah.
So that's sort of in the neutral side. Wages, neutral. 3 and a bit %, neither here nor there.
Nothing to worry about.
International economy, tightening, we discussed. By the time we meet next, we'll have probably had New Zealand, Europe, Kiwis, New Zealand, sorry, Canada, UK hiking interest rates. International's hiking interest rates. House prices are starting to come off a bit. At this stage, not bad. So that's only neutral.
What do you want to do with retail sales?
Retail sales, weak as water. Consumer sentiment, weak as water. Thanks, Mark. I can't reach that far. Building approvals, neutral. They're good. We've actually got an okay level of housing construction, but you don't hike, you don't cut.
Yeah.
Same with business investment. That's good. That's the data centres, hotels,
but just on
warehouses.
Just on the GDP number.
Oh, yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Just on the GDP number, I forgot about this. We should remember. A lot of the GDP 0.3, a big part of that, or a significant part of that, was bolstered by data centres in business investment.
A big chunk.
I mean,
like almost all of the GDP that we saw was due to data centres.
So if I
allowing for the fact that a lot of the equipment was imported.
Yeah. So if I took data centres out,
if you took data centres out,
we're in trouble on GDP.
And so that's stagflation, inflation high.
Yeah.
Stagnant economy.
Yeah.
GDP. What the hell do you do?
Yeah. So because for me, I know we don't do this, but for me, nearly GDP needs to have like a headline and an adjusted GDP.
Yeah.
And also for the first time, exports minus imports was minus.
Was a big negative.
Yeah.
Like
we haven't seen that for a long time.
By the way, Mark, you've just actually, before we go on with this, when I used to work in Treasury 35 or 40 years ago, when the farm sector in Australia was about 10% of GDP, the focus was on non-farm GDP because if it rained or there was a drought or something, the GDP number was heavily distorted by farm output going up 20% or down 20%. So it was non-farm GDP. No one refers to that anymore that I'm aware of because the farm sector has become less important. It's still important, don't get me wrong, but it's less important as a share of the economy. So it doesn't, even when there's droughts and floods and boom conditions, it doesn't really change your bottom line GDP that much. Maybe we need to, as you said, rethink about how we measure the health of the economy.
Yeah, I think so.
So rather than GDP 3 or 2 or 1 or whatever, how healthy is the composition of that growth too? Because it's sort of, where is the growth coming from? Like when we had COVID pandemic, all of the growth came from government demand. Fair enough, because that was shocking. We now want the private sector to pick up the slack, and the adjustment's been arguably too slow. While there's been a bit of a cooling in government demand and a bit of a pickup in private demand, it would have been nice if both of those were more extreme, but they're not. So you need to sort of say, well, what's this composition of our economy? And, if you wave your magic wand, you'd see GDP at 3, that old thing that we've spoken about. You'd have 80 to 90% of that driven by the private sector, a little bit by the public sector. We need roads and defence and all that sort of stuff. So that's fine. A little bit's fine. And you'd say you've got full employment with wages increasing by more than inflation at a sustainable pace. It sounds a bit like motherhood, but sometimes it's worth rethinking about. If you're the Treasurer, the Reserve Bank Governor, whatever, that's what I'm trying to achieve when I do put my tax changes through, or I do hike rates or cut rates or whatever. So...
Because the prosperity dividend out of a data centre growth for all Australians is very low.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean we need data centres for AI. I get all that. Yeah. But if someone's spending money on building a data centre, the prosperity that all Australians get out of that is not marginal. It's not much.
Unlike mining,
that's
when
different.
There's a mining boom and we export millions of tons of iron ore at $150 a ton, and we export bucket loads of coal, and we export lots of LNG, the income for Australia actually does find its way through to the government revenue.
Yep.
and therefore to the average punter.
There is a prosperity
So
dividend.
there's a really obvious, and it's significant, really big prosperity dividend. But we don't get that for
and the other thing I was thinking about in relation to data centers, in terms of this GDP number, is that most of the data center payments we're making goes not to Australia, it goes overseas.
Yeah, overseas, yeah.
And so somebody else is benefiting from our transaction.
If I can use this analogy,
I get it is an investment, but
it's better to have it than not have it.
No. And by the way, Steve, it's just one I want to say. Question becomes: is this a once-off only payment? Like, because have we got a new trend? Have we got 0.3% per annum data center growth for the next 5 years, or is it just once?
Just a bing, and then it comes back in.
That
I don't know. What I was going to say, it's a little like an airline, buying an airline.
Yeah.
You spend $300 million on a Boeing Airbus, Qantas buy one, for example. $300 goes out the door of the Australian economy, but Qantas have it, and that plane flies for 20 years or whatever it is, earning, I don't know, 50 grand every time it takes off and lands, or whatever the number is. And over time, it pays for itself well and truly. And so Qantas, as an Australian company, on the ASX and all these other things, buys the planes, great, improves its capacity to fly people around the country and around the world. They charge fares, which is great. So we get a benefit from that import of the plane. Clearly, you have more pilots and stewards, and you have a stale bread sandwich. No, Qantas, you're really good. But you have a sandwich and a cup of tea on the plane. So it creates jobs, which is great. I'm wondering whether data centers have that labour intensity when we import.
Well, data centers
effectively the
you know how many people are sitting in a data center? 2 or 3.
Yeah, just to make sure that the lights
Security.
don't go out. Security, and to make sure that the backup power.
Yeah,
because they've all got diesel, huge diesel motors in case the power's short.
It's designed to have not many people there.
By definition, yes. Yeah. Whereas a plane has lots of people. You serves it, you fill up with petrol, you change the tyres, it said pilots, people selling tickets.
It's a good point around GDP and the data centre number, because I just remember the number coming in last night, and I had a look at it and I thought, shit, that's a big percent.
It's been for the last 2 quarters, in fact, now. Yeah. It's been 6% for both quarters, 6 point something. I can't remember now, but yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, but we move on. Business confidence.
Business confidence is, put that in neutral. It's starting to weaken. Commodity prices.
Well, not too great.
They're not, but oil's up.
Except for oil.
Put that in neutral. Stock market neutral again. Current rates. We all thought that
we don't know.
We don't know. Put that one in the bin. No. Put that one.
Well,
in
we don't know what's
4.35. Is it neutral?
Is it neutral? No, I mean, because she said it herself.
Even they thought it was restrictive a year ago.
They
now say it's probably not that restrictive.
Well, she's not saying that. She's saying we're not sure where neutral is.
Well, yes, that's right.
But she was saying it was restrictive. Exactly, she was saying
6 months ago or thereabouts.
Yeah, she was. Definitely, she was.
When rates were lower.
Yeah. In December, she said rates were restrictive
at 3.6 or 3.85. I can't remember the decimal points now.
So
what you see, there's only a couple in the tightening. There's only a couple in the easing.
These ones don't matter.
Those ones sort of don't matter much. It's really these top 3 or international matters. Even these ones don't matter. If we were to say, okay, what matters? GDP, inflation, labour market, wages, international, hike, sort of neutral, and that's the stagflation.
Mate, if I take these out, all these out, they don't matter.
Not really.
What have we got there? Stagflation.
We've got stagflation. We've got inflation and a stagnant economy.
That's stagflation.
It is.
And just to finish this off, your view is that will be adopted? Do you think your view more likely to be adopted in terms of policy relative to the RBA is the Volcker position, which is the Keating position, which is fixed inflation? The rest will sort itself out.
And it'll sort itself out. That's the debate that is getting hotter and hotter by the day.
So
we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Because nobody can sort of hold their breath and say, I want a recession to kill inflation. Nowhere in the world. And so that's the dilemma.
Except we're ahead of everybody else.
We've hiked more than everybody else.
We could be first.
Yeah, we could be the first ones to come out and say it.
Yeah, but do you reckon Jim will say that?
No. I'll bet you a cup of coffee that he does not say it.
I'll bet you a case of champagne that he doesn't say it. Thanks, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark.